A very good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on wherever you're watching us. This is your program, Think Point Podcast, and today I am here with my own brother, Dr. Suleiman Jai, whom I've known not quite a long, but I really wish I knew this great individual when I was young. I would have looked up to somebody of this magnitude. But Doctor is somebody that I've watched most of his interview. I've gone through his articles, his scholarly arguments, and one of the things that fascinated me, with regards to his work, has to do with the kind of individual he is. Very principled, somebody he have talked a lot about, principles and issues related to that, and that really caught my attention to having on our platform to have a conversation around this individual who is Saul, where was he born, what sort of society was he living until he get to US, and he can also walk us through about his academic journey, and we will also look into politics a bit in the Gambia, and we will also look into the recent happening, the contemporary issues happening in the Gambia with regards to the issues of the allegations surrounding the issue of CDS, and of course his subsequent resignation. Also, we will look into that. And so we'll take us through all these things bit by bit, even though we do not have much time to spend on here. But I believe we're going to have him again someday so that we can have another conversation with regards to other things that are really happening in the country. Doctor, good to have you again.
Thank you, Mr. Joe.
Mbari na bejango moro.
Gambian.
Kan bari nyol barang bakel dal ben bari nyol smart work to your time. Idani Ibrahim, you got to start paying now.
Yeah, so over to
No,
you.
I was supposed to go to your other budding on here. Abdul, he actually has I couldn't call us already, in Texas. So you're supposed to go yesterday, but I've been a little bit tied up. No, but thanks for the introduction, Mr. Job. But yeah, so like I've said in some of my interviews and whatnot, I was born in Tujaring. I grew up in Georgetown, but I spent a lot of time in Tujaring. And my mom was from Tujaring too, and my dad was from Banjul. And I attended Nyako Nursery School in Ibo Town. Then I went to Serakuna Primary School, then St. Teresa's, then St. Augustine's High School. And then after my A levels, I came to the States. So I spent a good chunk of my childhood between Serakuna, Georgetown, and Tujaran. That's literally where most of my childhood was. And I spent some time in, visiting Banjul too, because my dad was from Banjul. I still live there, who still live in Banjul. So on my maternal side, we're from Tujarang. We're like 5 generations in now, which is interesting. And on my dad's side, we've been in Banjul probably since the 1850s. So we don't actually even know, like, we don't have any relatives outside Banjul, like going back. That's how far back we go in Banjul. But on my mom's side, yeah, we know where we come from. They came from the Padibunyomi, that border Senegal area, and then ended up in Tujarang, like how, everybody, you're from Tujarang too, everybody from Sanchaba in Tujarang is from somewhere, and everybody in Tujarang, in Sanchaba is what we will call a Luntango, right? So yeah, Lansar also like, well, from the, the inside or whatever, but from our end, we're probably now 4 or 5 generations in Tujarang. Yeah, those are like my vital statistics. I've been in America for well over 20, about 20 years now, probably most of my adult life, I mean, all of my adult life here in the States. But yeah, that's like my a quick background of, down and dirty of my background.
Wow, that's incredible. So it looks like all of us are from Tujere. Doctor, are you not from Tujere?
Alright, bro. Alright. I'm from Bruford and Nomi. I'm a Nominka.
All right. Doc,
Yeah.
Dr. Suleiman Jai, we're going to be very interested to know your academic journey too. Most of us growing up in combos do not even know the kind of lifestyle we are going to end up. We do not really know what we really even want to study growing in that kind of society. At some point, you do not have something that is going to inspire you. You don't see, most of the time, you don't see quotas that is going to really inspire you. The kind of, education route they might actually have taken that will actually boost your confidence and your willingness to pursue that kind of lane that they have followed, right? So if I'm to ask you, I mean, growing up, what are some of the things that revolve around your activities? What are some of the things that you are very passionate with? What are some of the things that you love to do? And at what point do you realize that I really want to study political science?
I was probably in the fourth grade because my mom's siblings are one. I mean, all of them were educated to a point, right? And one of them, you probably know him, Aliungam. He was so they were actually the first batch to graduate from Kingsland Primary School to go to Armitage, and that was Aliungam and Sofinding, Mr. Bojang at Newsred, and Dr. Mane. Those were like the first batch to graduate from, but this was like long time ago, right? Probably in the early 70s or whatever, maybe even in the 60s. I cannot remember when, but they were the first batch that started at Tujaran Primary School. But Uncle Aliu ended up with the Ministry of Finance, and then he ended up becoming a diplomat, um, minister under, permanent secretary Jawara, and then he was an American ambassador to the United States, and he was also one of the board of governors at the African Development Bank. And also Uncle Omar Ngom, Naina, he used to live next to Dudukoli, next, not far from the beach in Tujarang. And Uncle Omar was the one who took me to Nyako school because he was very involved in Doi politics back in the day, when I was a kid. So I had all these role models to look up to. Uncle Uncle Ali specifically because he had a lifestyle that I wanted. I remember I asked my sister one time what Uncle Ali did, and he was, what did he go to school for? And she told me, and this was probably in the fourth grade or third grade, I cannot remember. And from there onwards, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, and that was my roadmap. So I actually had those mentors, and I had people in my circle growing up that I could look up to. Not everybody had those opportunities. I did, luckily, right? That I was able to look up to, and they were able to help me map out my academic journey. Interestingly, Uncle Aliu attended my undergrad and my master's graduation both. He wasn't here for the PhD, but he attended both my undergrad and master's. And I've always had those people in my corner and just, doling me advice and whatnot. So I had those kind of mentorship. Even though I was in Serekunda, I wasn't surrounded with a lot of like intellectuals, but there were a lot of intellectuals around too. Like if you go to the Doi Bureau, I live right next to the Doi Bureau in Churchilltown. And over there, like it was just a fascinating place. I went to their nursery school too. So some of my teachers were actually Uncle Sidia and Uncle Halifa and those people, at nursery school level. And I grew up with their kids. And some of their kids actually, I came to college with them here in America as well. So I've always had people to look up to, and I've always been around circles where I was elevated. I could, learn from people and whatnot. So I grew up in a really interesting place, like, especially in Chajistan at that time.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Doctor, over to you. Solo Keranyadi.
All right, it was good, man. Kaya alam mo nasa Rizal, alam mo na mga pera.
I mean,
Yeah. Ini jiwera ni nyumara sinyo kono den sanadu kacha fon sobe ma kono.
Ako dong, kaya mo mo ko sa ito. Kaya kita tayo tao. Kaya sa alam.
Great.
in,
Ila audio is not really clear though. Malo fa kari jalban nas me kanyo. Me bada ni
Alam mo.
but audio oh, it's okay now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kaya ila i-upload ko lang may pondihan.
So, Doctor, like I told you earlier, we're not gonna keep you here longer. So we're gonna go straight to the topic of discussion today. You are somebody that speaks a lot about government politics. You do not shy away from taking critics and then speaking truth to the power at some degree. Recently, we've seen a lot of things happen in the Gambia, but first, I want us to start about the issues of allegations surrounding the CDS saga. Some of us who are not fortunate enough to witness Jambe's era, we have read it from the books or from the article written by Professor Sen and others. We've realized that in 1994, one of the things that agitated the coup d'etat was soldiers felt that their welfare had not been taken care of by their superiors. And subsequently, there was a counter coup in November 11 too. And in November 11 too, it wasn't a counter coup though, but it was quote unquote, planned coup. But some of the things that agitated those individuals to go ahead with those plans, they felt that what they have fought for has not been given. Like those boys at the state house were living in a very flamboyant life. They were very driving good cars, and they don't feel comfortable with that. As a result, from the testimony that we have heard, most of the soldiers in the barracks were really convinced that those individuals those do not deserve to be in the Marina Parade at that time. To connect these two things, some of these things are happening. Soldiers, young soldiers are seeing their bosses driving parados, having $1 million in businesses. Walk us through when you hear about these allegations. What comes to your mind? Put on your political science lens.
Yeah, I mean, just I'm not shocked or surprised at all, right? This is something you'll expect. And can you mute when I'm talking that way? Like, there's a lot of feedback. It seems like, yeah, okay, great, thank you. So I wasn't shocked or surprised when I saw it. What I was surprised about is that um the CDS actually resigned. Right? Usually they basically they dig in and then defend themselves, and the president is going to back them up. So it was actually surprising. But what I'm shocked about is that many governments actually applauding the fact that he resigned, because people don't resign when it comes to that. So the bar is very low. But for me, I'm like, no, we need to fully actually know exactly what happened, because these are serious allegations, right? Because for a country that is this poor, we cannot have people squandering and just wasting the resources, the meager resources we have in that country. And nepotism is nothing new. And like you kind of laid out a historiography of what happened in the last. Oops, is Mr. Job there? Omar, you're there, right?
I'm here.
Miss,
Yeah, I'm
Here.
here. I'm
okay.
here. I'm here.
I thought it seems like you have a good food Wi-Fi, man. You have a Nyaflin Wi-Fi. Have a Nyaflin Wi-Fi. No, but you laid out the historiography of what happened, in the Jawara era, coming into the Jammeh era, basically what led to the coup in '94, and of course the counter coups. What worries me about Gambia is the lack of responsibility in the country. Is Mr. Job there again, or is gone? Because I'm not sure. Because
It's just fidgeting this stuff, and then it's bringing two, three at one point. So he's still on the background.
oh, he's still in the background. Okay, okay, all right. Because I wasn't sure whether he was still there, but um, basically, like, I think one of the issues we have in the country is lack of accountability, right? Because it seems like this guy is gonna go scot free after everything he's done. And for somebody who's worked in the field of accountability here in the States, most of my work is around government accountability, is that if we don't address these issues and nip it in the bud and make sure these things don't happen again, they're going to keep on happening. Because how do you have somebody like the CDS taking a kid who has nothing at all to do with the government? Even if they did, even if they were in the military, it would be absolutely inappropriate for him to do that. One. But the guy, basically, and he did for his family. That is troubling to me. What I say about our state is like, it's free for all. You just come in, is like when UDP came in 2017, they said it was their time to eat, right? So it seems like people look at the government, and this is not the UDP problem. Even Jawara's time, it was very similar. What you see is that we've never developed the middle class up until the semester system happened. So what we've had before that was the government created the middle class. So everybody in government, there's this assumption that somehow they had access to money and they were supposed to be well off. And I think people like Mama Cham and all these people, they don't have any different idea of actually how they see the government. The government is their vehicle to move up. And that's what you're seeing. So until and unless we start addressing these issues and holding people accountable, because I think that's very important. Resigning is one thing. It's a whole different thing altogether. These are allegations, but the allegations are big enough that he resigned. We don't do that in Gambia. We don't resign. We double down. So the fact that he resigned, to me, points to the fact that this is much deeper and much bigger than what we've seen so far. And I think something has to be done. The Attorney General's office has to step in here with the help of the police and do some investigations and see where this is what happened, what transpired, and make sure these things are addressed, because we cannot just keep ignoring these issues, because these are serious allegations that public administration is very important. And this is what worries me about the Gambia. Everybody claim to be a good Muslim or good Christian or whatever. As long as you're not drinking alcohol or you're a good Muslim. You can go ahead and just steal people's money and resources. And for me, that's huge stuff. But I don't think like people even see it that way. People see the state as a vehicle to make money, to make their lives better and whatnot. And stuff is about to hit the fan at some point, and this is not sustainable. The government has to do something about this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes perfect sense. I'm not sure what Job is doing, but you know, seems like he has some. I wouldn't say nothing. My love is on Nigeria, but we have good internet. The
Uh,
problem in Poland these days is electricity. Our people are struggling with that. You know,
you're like mini Dubai now, so that's what I heard.
yeah. American sala lo kulo wada bara butong kulo man tarajiyo nyapa. You know. Yes. So I just want to pick it from what I think, Job, sometimes I think you definitely don't get history right. When you claim that the counter coup was on the basis that these other people went to state house and they were living a flamboyant life, I think that was not the case. It was simply and squarely because you never believed that they could succeed. They succeeded within a few months. You wanted to topple them. That was just it.
Yeah, I
We,
think that
we,
was
we got to be. We
their
got to be.
that was the fact, but their narrations was
Look,
like
so you want to buy into their narration and then you believe that's the fact because that is why Gambia still got it wrong. On the basis that we have a TRRC that came and wanted to vilify just one person and attempted to tell us that Jammeh was terribly bad and every other person he has dealings with were the good people. They are the good Samaritans. They were the innocent people. The only guilty person was Jammeh. And that narration and that narrative that continues to be peddled in our society is why we got it wrong. And that is why we've been recycling and cycling all of these people into key positions and they constantly or consistently be doing the same thing they've been doing before. Now, let's say you talked about the people that actually were part of the initial 1994 coup and opted out or chickened out at the last minute on the 21st of July before they get to the 22nd. Now, a few months later, you believe that these folks who just took power at that point, anybody in the Gambia would tell you that at the beginning of the junta, they probably did nothing wrong at that point in time because they probably did not even know how governance work and you think they had already amassed a lot of wealth that somebody else within the army, few months into it, could feel that, oh no, they shouldn't be there. It was more of an envy and jealousy among themselves. That's just the point. Now, here we are. We are talking about people who were recycled. And then, I don't think the generality of Gambians are actually bad or people who are corrupt here and there. Look at the profiles of these people who are doing a lot of things in this country that is not right. It's mostly the recycled people. The people that we felt were right, of course, their rights were being, abused here and there, and then we, of course, reinstate them either into the army. How could you reinstate coupists into the army? I'm not talking about the CDs. I'm talking about other people. How do you reinstate? How do you reconcile that with a common mind that it is very normal to reinstate a coupist into the army? How could you reconcile with yourself that it was very normal and attempted coupist to be the lead investigator of Jammeh? Look, this whole point is not about Jammeh or somebody, but it's about when you want to actually reset a country, you reset it using the right tools and the right personnel to do so. But you cannot use conflicted people of personal interest, and vendettas to actually reset a country. They will reset it on their own part and what they want, the reset to be on. And of course, that is where we got it wrong. I often tell people the new Gambia was so vague and that is basically where it got its strength. Because you and I would say, oh, this is not what we voted for. What did we vote for? Can you tell me what exactly we voted for in 2016? We actually voted to actually change a regime. But upon changing the regime, what do? You have a government in place. That government should actually champion changing the system. Our responsibility as voters was to vote for the regime to be ousted. But of course, their responsibility is to bring about, those reforms that they talk to us about. And after neglecting all those reforms, recycling some of the people that have perpetrated those crimes with even the person they claim to be the biggest, either evil person in the country, some of the people who were his biggest enablers and later turned out to be his victims became the people who were running the system. Barrow's government was hijacked by the APRC using political tactics. In politics, it's not about the heart, it's about the mind. There were people who in the beginning felt that the government belongs to them. until Sirinjai resigned from the APRC and went to Barrow to say we are relatives. And that relation was just Fabakari telling him, go bring the man to us. Take him from these other people who believe they, of course, they now control the power. So the power dynamic shifted, and you realize that most of the people that they were giving key positions, there are people that were banned by certain, commissions in this country. Where are they today? They're presidential advisors. Others became ministers, and others' ministerial roles were justified by other people who are no longer in government today. And then we've just seen the PPP regime coming back to the Gambia. PPP does not, in my view, prosecute people who are found wanting for corruption. People don't resign in the Gambia. They are compelled to resign during the PPP regime because they don't want to be fired. Because firing you has a negative, tag on you. And that's exactly what is happening. We knew that Barrow actually, intervened and told the guy to resign. So why would you actually see somebody who in one way or another have done something wrong, and it becomes your responsibility to make sure that the right thing is done? Court and of course prosecute me. How about people who are taking millions of taxpayers' money? They just ask you to resign and go and sit at home. That's basically what you think is a just system. So this whole thing about not just the military, what happened in the military in a lot of ways was so wrong that you cannot actually be sacking people in the military on ethnic lines. And the 1994 coup, in some of the narrations that Edward and other people told us, was more ethnically divided than ever then. And now you came in 2017. Who were they firing? They fired almost 17 people from a single ethnicity simply because their only crime was they belonged to an ethnic city that the former president was. These are things that people don't want to talk about in the Gambia, and I don't really care. I speak about them because they are the facts. They brought in Masane Kinte, who, in my view, is even worse than Mamar Cham. All he was doing was negative ethnicity, compromising the system, and of course, doing whatever he wanted to do, and of course, using the military to go and build his own houses. Of course, taking everything that we are alleging this man of, he was doing worse than that. But you know why that did not come out? There was no fallout between him and his personal assistant. And a lot of it came out because he was actually firing people on the basis of their ethnicity. Can you tell me why, General Musa Savage was fired from the army? Nobody up till date can tell you what exactly the man did wrong. Can you tell me why Major Jiba and other people were fired in the army? Nobody could tell you that they killed anybody or they were called to any commission. We have seen the likes of, is it Kinte who said that they actually killed Koros? He said, where is he? Is he still not working for the regime? So how do you actually speak, about equality, justice, in a decent society to people who actually have sense? We are not all dumb and we are not all blind. Of course, some people can actually dance to the political tune of the regime, but we don't. We speak the facts as they appear before us. So the whole point is that the new Gambia it started on a wrong footing. And everything about it was not proper. It was simply and squarely ntola lawado shida bodom fanangatanga mbumbayo okay.
That was a great submission.
So everything that they do, either TRRC or the Jane Commission, do you know that the original file of the Jane Commission is nowhere to be seen? Who asked the question? The original file. When the National Assembly Select Committee was set up to actually look into the affairs of the Jane Commission and the malpractices that were done there, you know what they gave them? A temporary file. Where's the original file?
Crazy. So,
do you know that people kill other people in this country and they're left mile 2 straight to the airport to the United States? How are those people better than Jammeh? Do you equally know that there are people who actually would, speak to police officers shortly before, robbery operations? And the Minister of Justice will be sitting on that up till date? How are those people better than the former regime? So the whole point is that, Gambia, for me, there was no reset, there was no change. We cannot, all that we talked about, we are changing from one leader to another, but the systems remain the same. The corruption remain probably worse than ever because Jammeh, at one point, he could be corrupt, but if no other person could be. But now it is normalized and it's institutionalized. And Barrow has only one problem. Take the money of the state, no problem, but don't take my money.
yes.
So how do you actually reconcile that to a proper system, in my view? But anyway, I want to just hold it at that.
That was a great solution. Yes, thank you, Doctor. So Dr. Sol, I just want you to come in with regards to what Doc has elaborated. Nina Tajibe, the issue of the former lands minister, Yafara Nunko, he was involved in some corrupt practices and process. He was not prosecuted though. He was going to court, but up to date, he's doing his life. He's going on with everything. And now we have this. As somebody who, at some point, understand military and civil relations, at this point, what do you really think would be in the minds of the our military? Do you really think they are happy with all the subjugation from Senegalese troops and stuff like that?
I'm not sure what the military is thinking. What I do know, especially like going back to what Doctor said, and I think he made some really good points. And I think one of them is that the November coup of '94, the counter coup with Barrow and Dotfall and them, that was a counter coup based on, because you have to understand it was Basiru Barrow and them who was actually, Basiru Barrow was actually the lead coupist. But Jammeh and them picked him to, I mean, not Jammeh, but Edward and Sana picked him to be their lead, to lead the coup. He backed out. He literally backed out, right? And then when the kids took over, he kind of felt type of a way. He wanted to come back and take over, right? And I don't think that time, sure. And there were some within the ranks who were saying that Edward moved his parents to Fajar, to Cape Point, and these people are living their life or whatever. But it was more of out of a grudge, right? That's really what it was. That we are the weird one-ups. Why are the kids taking over? We should be the ones running this stuff. And what happened, though, really, you cannot justify that. The killing of those people cannot be justified. But based on the history, what you laid out, people in government are always going to have their problems with the state. They're never, even in America, right? You're always going to feel like you're not well paid, because if you see your bosses living a life, you're not. Humans, that's just human thing, right? Personally, I don't just see the point of even having a military. That's a whole different conversation altogether. It's a total waste of our resources. They're literally good for just coups, really. Since we established the military within 10 years, they coup. And since then, all we have, really, the military cannot defend the country. And we know this because when the Senegalese came through with the ECOMIG, what did they do? They laid their arms down. They cannot protect the country. So for me personally, I would rather see us go back to what we had pre-1981. An agreement and just divert that money to something else. Because I think Barrow would be even crazy to let ECOMIG leave the country. And Doctor also made some good points here. A lot of Jolas were poached out of the military, not only military, but even in certain positions. I remember right after the impasse, I had a very fiery debate, argument actually, with Ahmad Gite. It ended up being like insulting, and that's one of the reasons I left Facebook, because he posted names of people with Jola last names in the Jammeh government, and basically said that these are all the people in government are Jola, and people didn't see anything wrong with it. And I was like, you're crazy. How is this normal? The question is, are these people qualified to be in these positions? Then we can have that conversation. Whether they're Jola, that's a whole different thing altogether. But I think you could see the normalization of that from that time. But you can also see why people will feel that way too. As a political, in social politics and stuff, you can see why people will feel that way as well, right? Because Jammeh played tribal politics as well. And you can see how people, especially people who don't have depth, could resort to that kind of stuff. But that doesn't justify it, right? So you could understand why somebody does something. It doesn't mean you can justify it. And I've always said this, being a victim of the state does not make you a good person or a bad person. It just means you're a victim of the state. That's it. What happened post Jammeh is that we take people who were victims of the state and turn them into demigods, turn them into heroes. That does not justify anything. It really means they're just victims. That's it. And I've had this debate with my UDP people too. They're like, oh, this person is a hero. I'm like, I don't even have heroes. I don't even believe in that nonsense. It's nonsense to me. It doesn't make sense, right? But people at some point. People like Mama Cham ended up coming, and because they were victims of the state, somehow we put them on a pantheon. And I think one of the problems with TRRC specifically was that it was a therapy session. You can come and say whatever crap you want about Jammeh and we'll just listen. That's what it was about. right? If you have anything crabby to say about Jammeh, they're there to listen to you. But I don't think there was a serious interrogation of who those people were and actually how to verify the stuff they were saying. Because we're emotional animals, the TRRC was an emotional, cathartic experience for the Gambians because what Jammeh did was insane. The stuff we were hearing was crazy. But anything you say about Jammeh, we believe you. Anything bad about Jammeh, we believe you. So there was no serious interrogation of some of these claims against Jammeh. So that means anybody who came to the TRRC ended up being a hero. Anybody who cared about Jammeh became a hero. And we never reset. We never did. So what happened? We ended up with a UDP government. When they left, we actually have a redux of APRC. The worst of the worst who were in the enabling Jammeh are back in power. You cannot, I and maybe Mr. Joe, you're kind of young, but I remember during the impasse when after the impasse, Halifa said we should have system change. That was a huge ruckus on social media because the people who were in Barrow's camp them were saying that this guy is out of touch. They were attacking him. But now we know exactly where we are and why we're here. Because you cannot go through what we went through with Jammeh. Because Jammeh was not around going around killing people. People were doing that for him. Jammeh wasn't going around taking money from the central bank, taking it into an account. People were doing that for him. What did we end up having? We had commissions, and the commissions named people. And what did we do? We recycled those people. So we never actually got to the point where there was real accountability. And you cannot deal with past trauma, and especially at the state level, when you have this kind of macabre, this kind of catastrophe, looting and all the stuff, and not hold people like seriously accountable. I mean, the only person we can say we held accountable here was, even for the killing of Koro, was Yankuba. I mean, that was like the most ridiculous, the most insane prosecution I've ever seen. I was listening, I read the Georgia statement, Mr. Jed, and I was like, this guy is out of his mind. And people on Twitter thought I was crazy. I was like, no, this is not based on what was presented in front of him. This was an emotional thing. And we're still going through that emotional stuff. We need to have a reckoning in that country. And I don't think we've actually gone through that reckoning yet. Because honest conversations about Jammeh, everything about Jammeh is bad. He's not good. Okay, fine. But then what? We cannot just selectively persecute people. And then the other people, we can whitewash them and then bring them back into the government to serve the purpose of the state. We have to start using our brains as a country. I'm not saying we shouldn't have reconciliation. I wrote a piece called Barrow's Fictive Commissions because I thought these commissions were a total waste of our money, total useless stuff. There's no reason why we needed those commissions. We knew who the killers were. Let the Attorney General prosecute them. We know the people who literally did the killing. Let the Attorney General prosecute them. Why the hell do we need to have, again, as a political scientist, I appreciated the TRFC. I appreciated those things. That doesn't mean I felt like they were necessary, because I think academically they're necessary for us to understand what happened and all that stuff. But there was no nuance to it. There was really no nuance to the TRFC or any of this commission. It was very one-sided, and there was really no real serious deliberation of basically, they don't question. If you come and say you're a victim, you can come and say whatever the hell you want about Jammeh. Nobody's going to question your integrity. Nobody was going to push back. And for me, I think that was service to the memory of the Gambia, to the memory of the state, and actually the continuity of the state as well. That's why we are back here. Every political party is going to whitewash these former Jammeh people, and we're going to keep on doing it because we never actually held people accountable. We never did. And that is very sad when you look at it. So this corruption is not a deviation from the Gambian experience. It's an absolute and necessary expression of it. This is what we do, man. We love it. And we're going to keep on, we appreciate it too. We like that people are stealing our money. We love it.
Do you think governments have problem with corruption, doctor?
I don't think so. If you look at it socioculturally, I will not look at it like politically or economically, but let's look at it sociocultural context. Gambia lombang kudemi ya longo, ni de do ko instead of what I'm hearing myself. I'm hearing myself. Near the director. Neither our director yala, what is going to happen is like, honey konyo ka mobi wa fala boy ularo angara kodoke ya boy. Ika kodoke jo kodo min namon kodoke na la dimbala fons. Ita na yela problem wala kodoke ka. Kodoke bare muso wa fala ande dingo fon bi jahi no ma ko no do ko le ta banyim palas bado. Idungo dung do see after the ana try requirement on you so it's a competitive bidding. Na try vacancy jamuna na man ta apply. E karibe jana ka kari ya e ma ko do ko. For do go ganyin wala nyam. Ndola society be wala nyam, and that is basically what we normalize in society. But that in itself is mental corruption. But we thought that those things are very normal, they are okay, it's not corrupt. Don't have corruption on mende. Ni na de wande ko lo tar la rin ya chika inaita. No. It got to a point that Gambia, you know how people actually get jobs is through either biological inheritance or barter trade. Ana on kolon doctor Sol timbora ngara amoro Omar fela man do ko soro no go ndata Omar tano la directly ba fala ko ngambare no la ta do ko la okay nga direct to do lo njana la mbara ngambare no ki ate ya bare no ki nande ya. These are the things that are happening in the system. The people who design the system know how to beat the system. So Gambia's corruption, is normalized from our households because we compel our people. There are two things. You either you balang and then you do the right thing, and even your own family will moja o baltiman. Inkodo kema bete ya. Abe director yala jan sanji tandulu amando kel fon mako no do kola. Bare ndo kel be muna ke kampur ka do ko soro ne fon oli. Na do kol ke dami bere no monten no mo lo wota fa. So the whole point is that, until society changes from the household, because the reflection of the household is what we actually take to the state. Because moro nga bon yalla da ngara do kola mansa kundanga bo mansa kundanga murun suwalo kono. So if at that basics level, people don't really understand that, no, you got to really be straight. And in our unguarded moments, these are the conversations we speak about our other people. But the whole point becomes, what are you doing to make sure that you live in a just society where it is, everybody is treated equally? Moro ni dara loptano do bi, era ranjamba dara je do no so long, e fon dai fon dara era on sunya, fo mange sunya ro. But we think that's very normal. We think, oh no, it's my association, it's my connection. Again, it's the same society where, you can add blood, okay, na carlo njera mo nga karo ko ni tata, molka, fenko mi follow nita for that ima molo njera avoka ho nyum corruption ol kari jibe sign na renare are dun nita fela janka bino mundu mambe siring. These are the things that we normalize in society, and those are the little petty things that we neglect and we ignore that would always, pile up to a point that it's your right. That is why you see individuals doing better than their offices. There are people many along office or and office make it make sense to me. And we've normalized that in our society. We've seen people building certain kind of, store. Many along and then mo sila. But anita mantra kangita mo science I know a palazzo. Fela bunjambal lola, buketi at a makata. You see the stereotype, but we are not even examining the fact. We do not examine that. So our society wants to see progress, but we don't care where it's coming from. That's a corrupt society. A society that does not examine facts, a society that actually normalizes things that happen and we know they are wrong, a society that only want the results and they don't care basically the path you took to get to that result. That is not a society worthy living. So the whole point for me, in summary, is that Gambia lombangu temi ya lonko when something happens. Kom ya fono nyami ko haramo kabra ba jolonga na ide data na mini data yele da wol dabit la bar nim maso wala ka how drong. But to nyabe dami wala nyente ko to reset that country. Even from 2017 or 2016, nim mini ka ko hey nyi nom to nyaade ka maybe ka Carla support or they vilify you. The likes of Doctor who were speaking about certain things structurally that could have been done better were seen as the enemies of the state. But fast forward, before 10 years, where are we? 3 years neglected, self-perpetuation, of course, glorified, and now other people crying foul. We've seen corruption, institutionalized. We've seen the recycling of people that we know are the biggest enablers of the former. And now even to the biggest oppositions who are biggest victims of Jammeh, think of actually forming alliances with some no to alliance or some other people. Bro, like, who are we deceiving? So Gambia long bankuti mi yalong ko akoli ata kundu ta manta vuntol be long kilingode. Kurial keta jane tilimbali ya jaw jawol mini yalong ko they needed actually proper reset. But at some point we saw people who wanted one thing. Let's vilify the past and make them look terribly bad. And again, we talked about Jaita here. Jaita was was a victim of Jammeh's government and turned out to be somebody who was to judge one of the biggest enablers of Jammeh, probably a co-coupist. Make it make sense to me. Again, look at the people who actually formed that TRRC and also the Jane Commission. Many victims of the same system. Others former enablers who turned to be victims again. Even whereas I say, oh, we will not inject emotions. Hadamadungo doroneti. Alanga Malta, who had nothing to do with whatsoever with the regime to make sure they do the right thing. We picked the wrong people to do the job. And some of them, not because they were wrong people, they have the technical and, of course, the academic qualifications to do so, but they have ulterior motives. Some of them have political ambitions. Baba Galle Jallo of the TRRC had political ambitions. Ezafal had political ambition. It was a political soul for some of them, and Barrow told us this. Even though they did, in my view, at a point, a phenomenal job, but we know some of the things that were done there. Do you know that a military chief was actually, interviewed or actually, spoke at the TRRC with a doctored voice, who is one of the biggest military criminals in this country? So at that point, you are trying to actually side with some of the people who needed proper interrogation because all you wanted is that tone of Jammeh is terrible. He's the most wicked person. He's a soulless person. Of course, we agree. But was that all done in isolation? What are the who are the contributors to this? So Nyulam Kultimi Yalong, I think we got it wrong from that point because that reset was a total disaster in my view. And that is why we still have Barrow, who had no clue how to govern. But even the people who were critical of him are now actually darlings of the regime.
Yeah,
But
that's
one day from that time, I told people, I remember in 2017, some guys organized some conference. I said, you know what, that is not going to kill nobody. Let's go out in the streets as students and, of course, university, staff. They took their mic from me. Before I realized, I saw those people sitting on the barrel because they wanted recognition. They wanted position. So, let me go sit home. But again, those are the same people when not giving position, you baron nem for baro palaso dila. Well, be mobile and then just to retain these positions. Moro forayante wotide. Ma for Gambian no man forayare, but jama ben konan kamin fondala ninka bara mina is very different. So it's difficult to actually police that society or to put the society on the right footing. At the end of the day, again, we are all interrelated. Ika jale ninyi ndo barata nyina. Ito ko iba fola so maika dori jai post. Wait, this guy is too close for me to actually tell the truth about this other person because how is he going to say it? So it's so difficult to tell the truth in the Gambia. So that's
yeah.
the problem. But anyway, I think we've got a problem with the reset. And I'm not sure if we have a chance to correct that. But I think we need to change the government. Again, we need a regime change. And with the hope that we will have a system that is able to actually bring about that meaningful system change. Because there is no way you can run a democracy on Jammeh's constitution. That has always been my take.
Yeah,
But
so
again, the system is never ideal and it's not willing to do any reforms. It is now in the hands of Sidinjai, who tells you who to hire and who to fire.
that is why I said I mean the time will not permit us to delve into most of those issues. But Sonjay, before we able later, I just want to sum of some political questions. Put you help us to analyze some of those issues. We have seen in 2016, Gambian came together. Khalifa and others swallowed their pride to rally behind President Barrow at some degree, even knowing what they knew at that time that Barrow might not even have the experience to be able to lead the country. However, with 30 years of political experience and Ahmad Ban others, decided to forego everything just to see that we have a new leadership in the country. Fast forward, there was political clash among them, and then Ibeja Nyenta. And the same thing happened in Senegal recently. People were together for within 3 years. I mean, they all went their way. What do you really think was the reason for the Gambian issue? What went wrong in the Gambia from 2016 to 2018?
I think we've rehashed this for years now. But I think what Halifa and Syria says, I take them seriously because these people don't lie to us. If anybody can point to where they lie to us, fine. Some of the other people I can dispute with all due respect. What happened was very simple. UDP realized that they took power and they wanted to run the country. And that's what happened. When that happened, Halifa and Syria said, well, we're not going to take any ministerial positions. We're going to end up running for the parliament. And that's what they did. Right? So they did not join the government because the agreements they had, because Halifa's before, because for Halifa and Ahmad Ba and those people, they didn't have a choice because they were in the minority during the coalition. And it made perfect sense for the party, the guy who came from the largest party, political party, to run to become the standard bearer. That makes sense because it's a numbers game. The UDP guy in Adama Barrow became the standard bearer, which makes perfect sense, right? They had to also understand for somebody, it's not about them per se. They needed a change of government. So they will do whatever they needed to do to get Jammeh out. It wasn't about egos or any of that stuff. And I think that was able to work. They were able to do that to work. And I think we forget if it wasn't for Khalifa during the transit, during the impasse, things could have been really, things could have gone really awry. Because it was Khalifa who was telling us we didn't even know what transition, how it works. It was Khalifa who was educating the whole country. It was the same Khalifa who was basically telling us, yeah, Jammeh, if he doesn't leave at this day, he's a rebel, basically. And he was the one who stayed in the country. And I think we forget this. Barrow was sworn in Dakar, not in Gambia. It was Khalifa who was in the Gambia. He said he wasn't going anywhere. He didn't leave his house, Sarakunda. He wasn't even going to go under anybody's protection. These are people with integrity. Sometimes we forget and get into the whole muddy politics of it. But the problem started when the transition happened. And during the transition, I'm not privy to the details. I don't think many people are. But Halifa and Sidia told us what happened. Usainu Dabo told us what happened. Adam Barrow hasn't told us much, right? We haven't heard a lot from Adam Barrow. But from Halifa and Usainu and all those people, we at least get a hint. From the Doi people, it was that Khalifa wanted to create like a think tank where we can like bring the best of the brightest minds to come together and come up with ideas. That's what he wanted to do. These people have no interest in being ministers and all that stuff. That's what he wanted to do. And he was denied that. And then when the politics started getting messy, he was like, I'm gonna stay away. And all these things happen in politics. And they elected leader. So he had every right to do whatever he needed to do. That you can't blame any person in the presidency for doing that. You can blame for the outcome. But the rights and all that stuff, listen for the 3 years, right? Because for me, mentally, I was like, yeah, we're going to have a 3-year transition because that was what was in my head. We all agreed to that. And so for me, that's what it was. And then the moment they took over, people like Usainu Dabo and Yankuba Dabo basically were telling us, nope, we're not abiding by that. They told us straight up, they're not. Usainu Dabo actually told us that he was going to sue people who actually want Barrow to step down after 3 years. And for me, I was like, what are these people even talking about? So then when they left, now they wanted people to come to their corner now. All of a sudden, Young's Dawa was a 3 years Jannah guy. And I actually wrote an article to defend Young's that he has the right to do that. But that's lack of principle too. It's not based on principle. You are winning, right? It's all about my camp. But it's not about actually for country. It's politics. And I understand that. Because politics is about these are interest groups. So you have different interest groups coming together. They have divergent ideas. And if I'm the majority, why would I want to give that up? Right? So they didn't want to give that up. But I think from the get-go, you could see some of the friction. Because I remember my Fati's first press conference when he said that the central bank was looted. There was no money there. Halifa said, no, that's not true. There's no evidence of it. I knew this wasn't going to last because there's different people who are dealing with the same things. Because people like Khalifa and them are very black and white. And then you have these career politicians who really, they were not making arguments based on any principle. With Jomai and Sonko, it's the same thing. You cannot have two leaders at the same time. You just cannot. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. And Jamai has every right to do what he had to do, but he has to deal with the ramifications of that as well. And you're going to see this happening over and over again. I think in the Gambian case, it was a little bit different because Barrow was very, I would say, Barrow gave Usain Dabo his dues. What UDP wanted was just unreasonable. It's very different from what happened in Senegal. They wanted Barrow to step down so that Usain Dabo would be president. That doesn't even make sense. I've never heard that before. I've never seen that in any country before. So what they wanted just didn't make sense. Barrow really, I remember in their during their Gunjur convention, Barrow tried to get them to nominate him. They refused. They refused. He is the sitting president. His party refused to. So what do you expect that guy to do? He's not gonna. I mean, like really, it just was unreasonable. Sonko is not asking Jomai to step down or whatever. But Sonko is in a government that he is actually fighting. You know, it's going to be friction. And I just don't see how that was sustainable. I mean, so it's just inevitable. It was just a matter of time and again, governance is hard. Running a country is hard. Administering for human life is not easy. Being in opposition is much better than being in government. As in, if you're in government, you have to actually implement stuff. If you're in government, if you're out of government, you just criticize. You know, so it's much easier to do that. So people like Sankar, the way I look at him, and he's also created a cult of a person, like like any other politician. And for after 2 years, I really haven't seen the results of his governance. I really haven't. I've seen a lot of rhetoric that make people feel good, and anti-Western stuff, which makes people feel good too, and it makes me feel good sometimes.
Mhm.
But you have to run the country at some point. And I think some of these problems you have is that some people are more comfortable pushing the state from the outside than actually being the ones implementing their policies.
I will not allow you to go without asking you this question of UMC, and UDP at some degree. UMC, I mean, they are struggling to get registered with IEC, and for me, I have a personal, opinion with regards to the way IEC does their stuffs, which does not really convince me at all, at all. What do you really think, UMC is getting wrong in getting registered in a force? Let's start with that.
Honestly, I'm not really too sure what's going on because it's all very confusing to me, right?
Exactly.
If every Tom, Dick, and Harry can register a political party, why can UMC do the same, right? Um, some of it is technicalities, and I think they will solve that. They will resolve it. I remember in 2021 they did the same to Ismail Assise, and I think people forget this. They did this
Mhm.
to the CA. They did it to them and made sure those people didn't run. And some of the people from UDP were supporting it, you know, and some of the people in Barascam were supporting it too. There's this anti-democratic idea of making sure certain people don't have a seat at the table, and you could see they're trying to frustrate them because in 2021, NPP had a convention before they even had a party. Technically, they just named a party. Actually, they had a party before they even had a convention, something like that. But they went against the rules or whatever. Because I remember the whole noise or whatever when it came to Chestertown at the bureau or whatever or whatnot. But they didn't follow the rules the way they're supposed to, right? But these are technicalities, and I think it's a nothing burger. And I think UMC should and would, I think, address this before it's too late.
This is, I mean, very rare in Gambian politics. A new movement coming up and subsequently making wave, making names for themselves. We have seen the recent rally in Bubasu, and a lot of people were shocked the kind of crowd that they pushed. What do you make out of that, gathering?
I don't make much out of rally numbers. I really don't. I really do not. Because the last election UDP had, I mean, 2021 bunch of people. SFR pulled big crowds at buffer zone as well. We've seen those things. I mean, we're talking about at least close to 1 million voters here. And buffer zone will carry what, maybe 30,000 maximum. There's enthusiasm though. There are a lot of people who are excited about the candidacy of Talib, and you can tell, you really can, online, and of course that is also a manifestation of it that people came. But I don't put a lot of stock in rallies though. I really do not. I don't. I don't put a lot of stock in rallies. The only thing I can look at is that are people enthusiastic about them? Yes. It seems like people are very excited about change, and a young, dynamic leader translate to raw numbers. I have no idea. I don't think anybody can tell you right now. But people online, I mean, it's a bragging right for UMC, right? Because if they had a rally and then few people showed up, that would have been a problem for them, right? But it's a bragging right because that means there are people behind them. Is that going to translate to a victory? I'm not sure, and I don't know. I don't think anybody can tell you at this point.
The last question, to let you
The last
go,
question,
Doc,
to
is
let you
going to
go,
be,
Doc, is
I
going
think
to
your
be,
mic is echoing there.
I think your mic is echoing there.
Yeah, so the last question I wanted to put it to you has to do with the issues of coalition ahead of the election. We have like 5 to 6 months, and then we haven't seen any serious conversation around coalition building. And from the political analysts, including yourself, believe that without strong coalition, it's going to be very difficult to win over the incumbent, which is President Barrow. And from the position of some opposition, including United Democratic Party, do not really want to negotiate the issues of the leadership. They really said they want the leadership, and any coalition that they're gonna take part, they have to lead that coalition. When you heard about that statement from United Democratic Party, what was your reaction on that? Do you really think that that was
Do
a
you really
case?
think that that was a case?
I'm not surprised because they're the biggest. They have the biggest number. They have the most numbers. So why would they want to cede the leadership to anybody else? I mean, the same thing happened in 2016, right? That's why we ended up with Barrow. Because in any serious country, you would have looked at like, oh, I don't think Barrow is the best candidate here. You had Halifa City and all those people, and Dr. Asadou Toure and all those people out there. But again, UDP is a political party, which is an interest group, and they're also the largest political opposition. So why would they want to cede that power? The only question is the leader of the UDP, Hussein Dabo, cannot and would not win the presidency in that country. He just cannot. And he's failed. And it doesn't seem like the people are going to vote for him. But as a political party, I understand exactly why UDP would want to say that. Why would they cede their power and their numbers and give it to someone else? Because I don't think there's any opposition that actually has numbers that even come close to UDP. The problem is UDP just trying to lead a party or are they trying to lead a coalition to change the government? That's a whole different thing altogether. If they're trying to just lead their party and have the bragging rights, sure, they will have to stick with their candidate. If they want to win, I don't think Dabo is the vehicle for that.
Yeah, finally. What do
Finally.
you have to say
What do you
with
have to
regards
say
to?
with regards to?
Yes, I think
Yes,
yeah, echoing.
I think
The mic is
yeah,
echoing.
the mic is echoing.
So, what do you have to say with regards to the issues of coalition talk? I mean, in 2016, Gambian opposition leaders came together in Atlanta. I mean, they have a conversation. They put aside their party's interests, and of course, to make sure that Gambia is out. Knowing what is really happening in the Gambia today, President Barrow and his counterpart, he needs people, the kind of corruptions and, a lot of things are really happening in that country. Do you really think that without a formidable coalition, um, oppositions are really going to, win 2026 election.
I think it's going to be really hard. Incumbents, it's really hard to win against an incumbent, especially when you have a disunited front to fragmented opposition to take out the president the party in power. I think a coalition will be necessary. It will probably be the easiest route to get Barrow out, but I wouldn't say it's the only route. We have seen again in 2016, if Mama Kande still won. With Mama Kande not joining the coalition, he took about 90,000 votes from Jammeh. 90,000, 90. Those people probably would have voted for Jammeh if Mama Kande had joined the coalition. Jammeh lost by 18,000 votes. And you're going to tell me those 90,000 Mama Kande voters will not go vote for the coalition, right? So Talib could be a spoiler here. You never know. He could be a spoiler. There could be other candidates who could be spoilers, and maybe Hussein Dabo could be the spoiler. And Talib, this could be a fragmented election where 30% or 35% each, or 30% each, or 32% is it's a single majority vote. It's a simple majority vote. So it's very easy for someone to win just by just pluralities, right? But I think without the coalition, it's much harder. With a coalition, it's much easier because they've been speaking from one voice, and they're gonna have the entire opposition behind them, of course, who are now, of course, for all intents and purposes, part of the battle wing. But other than that, I think it's going to be really hard for any kind of victory against battle. If I was a wager, if I was a betting man right now, I would bet on battle winning the presidency in 2026. I can hear you.
Thank you so much for joining
Thank you
me.
so much
I
for
mean,
joining
it's,
me.
it's a very great
It's
evening.
a
You know,
very great
I am really
evening.
excited to talk to
Really
you.
excited to talk
I'm
to you.
somebody that I've been looking up to
Somebody
have
that
a
I've been looking
conversation
up
with
to
for
have
quite
a
a long
conversation
time. I am
quite a
deeply
long
happy
time.
that
I
we
am
can
deeply
have a
happy
conversation,
that we can have a
regardless
conversation,
of the time
regardless of
and
the
your busy
time
schedule
and
to
your busy schedule
have this
to
conversation.
have this
Looking forward to
conversation.
having
Looking
more
forward to having
conversation with you
more
as we head
conversation
to
with you as we head to
an election and even outside
election. And
politics.
even
I am
outside
really
politics, I'm
going to be very
really
interested to have a
going to be very
conversation
interested to
with
have a
regards to the
conversation
academia
with
and
regards to
related to that. You know, if you have a last statement, you can go ahead with it.
have a last statement. You can go ahead with it.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I mean, it's been a busy day, so that's why I'm in my car. This is the first interview I've actually had in a car before. Usually I'm at home. And but thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation as usual. And I think we should keep on having these conversations as Gambians, just to share ideas and what we think. And at the end of the day, we all want to see a better Gambia for posterity, for ourselves, and of course for posterity as well. And it's fascinating. Two kids from Tujarang, we're out here. You in New Jersey. I'm out here in Texas. We're talking about government politics. you know, but yeah, it's really interesting and exciting times. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you so
To
much,
our
Doctor.
viewers, thank you so
To
much
our
for
viewers, thank you
being with
so
us.
much
It
for
has been a
being with
great day.
us.
It
It
has
has
been a
been a
great
great
evening.
day. It has been a
I was looking forward this conversation with my brother from Tujarang. I am deeply excited. The first time I heard him saying that I'm from Tujarang, I said, wow, now I have somebody to look up to. I mean, growing up, I was very fascinated with politics and international relations, and I realized that those are your domains. And it's just now I have to do that is what we call kind of segment though. But nonetheless, I am very fascinated to talk about governance issues is related to that. I was an activist in the Gambia, very stubborn kid though. Or America humbled me though. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for being here with me, and thanks to Dr. Momo. Yeah. Yes, so this brought us to the end of the conversation. We really appreciate your time for being here. Those of you watching us on YouTube, and of course, those of you watching on us Facebook, it's going to be later stream on TikTok as well. This is conversation that we love to have. We love to bring people from different scopes of life to have a conversation with us, with governance, with economics, and other related issues. We're also going to host a program whereby we will be bringing young leaders in the country. A lot of people really want to have a conversation here, and we will give the opportunity to come and share their ideas, especially young folks going to school, going to university. Some of them are on their master's program. They really want to share their ideas, their experience, and issues related to that. We're also going to give them platform to continue having conversation. It's not only to bring, elites here, but we're also going to bring our brothers who are into skills, who are into businesses, and other domains as well to continue having conversation that we love to have. Thank you all for being here. And if you are watching us on YouTube, please consider subscribing to our channel. If you're on Facebook, you can go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. I am a very, very busy dude, but I always try to create this time out of my busy schedule to come here every Sunday to have a conversation with Gambians around the world. And then it really, I am really fascinated to have this conversation going on. And I want to thank everybody who has contributed towards this program, the encouragement, the support, and all the kinds of support that you guys have been giving. We really appreciate it. And thanks to Dr. Malmo, a brother whom I just have to pick my phone and tell him, Doc, please can you join me to have this conversation? And he will always be here with me to make my work very easy and to have a conversation around the issues related to the Gambia. I really appreciate his support, his brotherly support, advice, and mentorship that he has been giving to me over the years. It is Gambian issue. We will continue to have a conversation. Today I am sandwiched by two doctors. That is why it is always difficult, to have a conversation with individuals that have huge experience when it comes to the subject matter. I just have to put the question to them, and they will walk us through their experience, their expertise, and then their intellectual analysis to make work easy for me. And then I really, really appreciate their input. They have spoke a lot about issues related to the Gambia, the incident of CDS and his resignation. And Sonjai also delved into the issues of politics as well. He talked about issues of coalition and possibilities ahead of 2026 presidential election. And thank you all for being here. I really appreciate your time. Do stay with us. We will be back next week Sunday with another guest, probably that might be Nkobadamo or somebody else to have a conversation with. I really appreciate your time.